Hello, everyone. Today I'm so happy to have with me Luis Gallardo. Luis is the founder and president of the World Happiness Foundation and the World Happiness Fest, two of the largest global platforms dedicated to advancing human development, well being, and collective flourishing. I love that word. He is the author of Happitalism, The Exponentials of Happiness, and Brands and Rousers, and serves as director of the Gross Global Happiness Program at the United Nations affiliated University of Peace. A former global CMO at Deloitte and senior executive at Burson Marsteller and WPP, Gallardo blends strategic leadership with social innovation. His work focuses on elevating global consciousness, connecting thought leaders, and creating ecosystems where individuals and societies can thrive. Welcome, leaders, and those of you who want to become a leader in your own life. As the world becomes more complex and the velocity of change keeps increasing, true leadership requires resilience, presence, vision, a dynamic ability to adjust and change, and the self-awareness to create healthy environments and cultures for your constituency. I'm Dr. Stephen Sideroff, and this is Quantum Leadership Podcast, where we go beyond conventional wisdom to explore the powerful principles of the quantum effect, and that to maximize leadership's ability to connect mind, body, and organizational success. Luis, what a pleasure to have you here.
Oh my goodness, I'm so happy seeing you here and being with you. Last time we met in Guatemala at the Volcano Summit. That was really
Right.
a fun time.
That was we did a spur of the moment joint program there.
Yes.
That was great. So let's get started by telling us a little bit about your personal journey to happiness, so to speak. But to happiness is also to executive leadership and your view of leadership and what is missing and what's needed.
Well, life is all about connecting dots in many ways. It's a continuous learning journey. And something that probably three moments that I connected in my life were early. So I was basically a sports coach for many years. When I was 14, I was already coaching kids, 8 years old kids. And when you're a sports coach, you have to have a global perspective or basically systemic perspective about your team, especially if it's team sport. And then about every single individual because you want to maximize their potential. So I think I learned so much getting into sports coaching since a very early age that stayed with me as a kind of way of being and living. Then I studied political science, sociology, and I went into the space of peace and conflict resolution. So I wanted to become a diplomat. And that's why I was very interested on okay, how can we achieve the maximal levels of peace in the world? But actually, my mindset was about outside me. It was outside. It's like, how can we get the conditions for people to flourish? What I learned very quickly when I went to post-armed conflicts, like in the former Yugoslavia, as I was an international observer, that it was too late. We were too late. We were our my key learning is that diplomacy has to work before. It has to have a preventive goal. It's not about restoration. It's about prevention. That was my key learning. So I felt, well, I don't want to be a diplomat because this is about basically trying to solve issues that should have been solved much earlier in the process. And that was not diplomacy is about today in the world. Diplomacy is about transactional diplomacy. It's about tick for tack. I give you this, you give me that. And that's normally after the conflict, it's not before the conflict. And so from there, I moved into corporate work. I thought, well, probably my focus is much more impactful if I move into the 50% of the wealth management in the world. And I stayed for a long time in the corporate world. And there, what I learned is that actually, when the focus of business is revenue and money, that's it. That's what you are in business for. Then you can be more responsible or less, but that's your goal. So in the end, where I connected the dots is like, okay, how can we? Because I was feeling congruent. I went so many times to the World Economic Forum, and when you go to Davos and you have all these world leaders talking about the state of the world, and the framework is economic growth. That's it. That's what you are aiming at. And then everybody becomes a consumer. You are either a consumer or you become a product. And that's what the world has achieved at so many levels. And I was feeling bad. So for some reason, I was always leaning towards, let's go back to my root. My roots are peace studies. That's why I study. How do we make peace? And suddenly what I discovered one day is like, okay, this is actually the solution. In order to get to peace, you have to be peace with yourself. And that was my aha moment. And that's when I started to research what is the best way to get at peace with yourself. And that brought me into my strategic mind, which is very systemic. And I discovered that probably the way we can bring the whole world together, the whole humanity together, is through something that brings us all together. And that is in us. And that is meaningful for everybody. And I discovered that's happiness. So I chose happiness because I thought it was the most strategic way to get into inner peace. And I can tell you more, but this is about me. I'm a discovery. I'm an explorer, and now my exploration is going deep, 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 deep into inner.
Well, the Dalai Lama says that the purpose of life is happiness.
Yeah, it's the Dalai Lama, but it's almost every religion. Is I would say every religion is about every mystic uh, branch of any religion is most of philosophical currents is actually what everybody wants for their kid and for the families. You ask, what do you want to your kids to be? Well, you say happy. So it's the common thread of humanity. That's why Dalai Lama is so wise at so many levels because he's voicing what is the truth for humanity.
Yeah. But it's interesting, Lewis, while all that is true, as a psychologist, when I work with people on all different levels, rarely will they express that as a goal. They have all other kinds of goals and visions for themselves, but it's rare and only with prompting will they acknowledge, yeah, happiness. It's as if I got to get everything else okay. And then I've worked hard enough. So now I can be happy. Like, we wait until we retire to relax, that kind of thing. And I love how you say that happiness is a human right. Can you say a little bit about how happiness, for all those that want to put happiness on the back burner until they get everything else straightened out, what can you say to them that about happiness as a human right?
Yes, and this is very much uh, linked to what you said when you see clients. You know, we forget that happiness is in us. We forget that happiness is a right, is is the beginning of flourishing. We forget about this. And we think that we have to work harder, that we have to suffer, that we have to go through uh, bad moments in order to achieve the good moments. Somehow we got amnesia about what humanity really means. So that's why one day we decided to elevate happiness at the human rights level. And that's why we work with every country around the world. We work with the United Nations, and we were able to pass one resolution that is the creation of International Day of Happiness. And that's March 20th. For the last 12 years, the whole world, from psychologists to economists, anthropologists, historizations, economy, I mean, you name it. We rally all the global community about understanding that we have to put focus on what is important. And that's why we send this message to everybody. It's like, sure, you might be suffering, but there is a way out of suffering. And the way out of suffering is very clear. There is a path, and we can show you what is the path. But you can go through the path, and it's going to be even better going through that path if you understand what is the end game. And the end game is state of bliss. In Indian culture is ananda. Ananda is a state of contentment, is a state of delight, is a state of fundamental peace. But the energy in that state is the energy of happiness. A happiness is a human right and is an activator at the same time. When we get the energy of happiness, our whole body, actually, we've seen the scanning of the whole body, and different emotions are lighting parts of our body. Actually, when you scan the body and you feel happiness, the whole body is lighted. So sadness might be lighting your stomach. Um, Anger might be lighting your guts. Joy might be lighting your heart. But happiness lights the whole body when you scanning. So amazing. Doing that from MRI, even your brain. So yes, we believe that happiness is human right. Actually, you look at the United States Declaration of Independence. It's about life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. If you look at constitution all over the world, they conclude that the role of the government is to guarantee the well-being, because happiness in the science space, in the scientific space, is being defined as subjective well-being. So it's the perception of being well. So this is the way we measure that, or is even satisfaction with life. So there are many different definitions, but those are the most extended definitions. So governments understand that their role as governments is to guarantee the well-being of their citizens. So I think that this is so extended at, at the macro and micro level, but nobody put the focus, because we understand that this is something that is going to happen at some point. So it's going to be spontaneous. Well, it's not. You have to design for happiness. How do you design cities for happiness? How do you design schools for happiness? How do you design a life worth living? The thing that we are doing as a foundation, and me as an individual, is to put focus, a strategic focus and pragmatic focus on something that everyone wants.
Well, we know that where you place your focus, the energy flows. So that in and of itself is a good reason to focus in on happiness. But I'd like to go back. You mentioned some research studies that showed that happiness causes in scans to light up the whole body, I think you said. Can you explain that and then tell us what you think the significance of that is?
Well, I think I'm tapping a bit here in your space, right? Is the quantum leadership space. Um, what we know about quantum dynamics and quantum physics is that the observer changes the reality. So that's why when you put focus on something, you change the reality of that something. So when you look at the top researchers of happiness in the world, let's say Ed Diner, incredible psychologist, Sonia Lubomirsky, Martin Seligman, Shishay Miyake, even when you go back to Abraham Maslow, as part of the beginning of humanistic and then transpersonal psychology, what they all convene into is the space of transcendence. It's not just self realization, it's self transcendence. So when you do a scanning brain scanner or body scanning of people who are self transcending, of people who are connected to higher selves of energy, the whole body lights up. So it's an extension of the energy from your toes to your head. And that's incredible because that's the energy of the most pure energy that you can find in the universe. It's an energy, is like getting the gas in your engine. So you can spark the engine, and but then you need the gas or you need the electricity, if an electric car, in order to keep the engine moving. Happiness is that substance. Some happiness is that energy that is lighting up and is bringing us into higher state of being. So, you know as well that this is all about definitions and this is all about words. I don't like to define happiness, by the way, because the moment you define it, you limit it. So we know that when we do research, we have to define everything, because otherwise you cannot measure it. But the issue with energy is the moment you put a label into it, you make it static, and then it cannot be expanded. So at some point, that's why we leave it open. Is that what is it for you? What is happiness for you? And happiness for many people is peace. Happiness for many people is peace. And you see this with your clients when they come with issues. Is what do they want? They want to get out of suffering. That's what they want. So please help me suffer less. Please get me out of my pain. So they are not thinking about it, they are thinking about getting out of suffering. When we understand that you can get faster out of suffering when you have happiness state of mind, a state of being, as a way of being, then that's the beginning of getting out of suffering.
So you wrote about the Rouser leadership model. Can you tell us about this leadership model?
Yes, well, as you mentioned, I've been in the corporate world for many years, and in the corporate world, people love models. So you want a model for everything because that's the way you can you can tell a story and you can have a narrative. And because I trained so many leaders, uh, at some point I created two frameworks. One is the Rouser model, and the other one is ITM, which is the integrative transformational model that goes more into shadow work. Is more based on depth psychology from Carl Jung, and it's about understanding what are the repressive parts of us that we don't want to see. But those are the ones that are actually conditioning my behavior. And when you are a leader and you don't know your shadows, then it's very difficult to balance your emotions and to create harmony and equilibrium and become secure base, a psychological secure base for your team. So I have those two models. Rouser stands for relationships. Rouser is a rebel rouser. Is somebody who is able to rouse, to grow, to become a gardener of rouses in many ways. So that's the concept of leader. Is somebody who can make people flourish. You like the word flourishing. So rouser is basically the acronym as well of relationships. Everything starts with a relationship, with with basically the relationship with yourself and the relationship with others. So we are mirrors in many ways. We are projectors. We grow and live in relationships. La O stands for openness. The way in a relationship, I open my heart, I open my mind, I open everything down in order to understand. Actually, you is understanding, Rouse. So relationships, openness, understanding. So when I understand, I can forgive. When I understand, I can make decisions in a wiser way. S stands for self awareness. Self awareness is the way I know who I am. E stands for empowerment. How do I get into the role model of who I want to be? How do I empower my team? How do I make decisions based on accountability, made based on responsibility, the ability to respond? When I say responsibility, I always think, do I have the ability to respond? Am I empowered to respond at all? And then the last R is about reflection, is what I call contemplation, is the observer in the quantum system. So Rouser, yes, it's become a model that I use for coaching because I'm a professional coach and we have a whole academy, the World Happiness Academy, where we are training hundreds, thousands of coaches and leaders around the world. We have another program focused on Chief Wellbeing Officer. It's the largest program in the world, training leaders to become the heads of well-being in schools, in companies, and cities. Um, and when we teach this model, we make this very practical. So that's the Rouser leadership model that I coined, and I've been training thousands of leaders around that.
That's beautiful. And as you're talking, Louis, your model and my work resonate so much in terms of, to begin with, recognizing the importance of a person doing their own inner work so they know their shadow, so they know their demons, so they know what can throw them off balance, and they can either address it or at least be aware of it in their interactions. And of course, the notion of self awareness is at the core of all of this, really understanding and knowing yourself rather than projecting your anger and other things out on other people. So it's a great model. I appreciate every part of that. When you say O for openness, open heart, and I like to say that people either come from their heart or come from protecting their heart. And too many of us, for various reasons, come from a place of protecting their hearts, which interferes with them connecting with other people. Can you share a couple of examples of how you've used this in working with leaders and like some of the difficulties in that work as well as some of the successes?
Yes, and thank you so much for that. And I know your model very well is amazing, and is very. I mean, our models are really interconnected in so many ways.
Hmm. Right.
Ways. Yeah, I can give you the example of maybe two leaders, very different. One is, uh, let's say, one leader in a multinational in the United States. Um, for so many years, he was um, suffering a lot, suffering, but hiding the suffering.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
when he was in the office,
Not uncommon.
not uncommon. This is like
Right.
we hide. We use the
Right.
mask. We use a mask.
Right.
Everybody's using the mask. And then it's a
Hmm.
mask talking to another mask. And we don't know who is behind the mask.
Right.
Uh,
Right.
so this is a typical CEO, is not a minor uh, leader in the company with a very important mask. This is a mask that is his identity. At some point, nobody could imagine that he was wearing a mask, but that mask was hiding a really deep pain, and that deep pain was basically living for more than 65 years with his mother, hating her mother. So it's not like I don't like my mother. No, it's I hate my mother. He never forgot how his mother was abandoning him when he was a child.
Hmm.
And he grew with coping mechanisms that was were getting him into addictions, one addiction after another addiction, because he was missing the love from her mother for the whole life. So he was a really sad, angry man. And at some point, when we did, but his mask was a mask of security, was a mask of self assurance, was a mask of I don't make mistakes, was a mask of, even bullying people. At some point, he was overreacting in order not to feel the pain and abandonment that he felt all his life. So at some point, when we went through one of our workshops, something really triggered him. And it was another colleague sharing about something similar. It was how sad he was when he lost uh, his mother. And he was never able to tell her mother how much he loved him. He loved her. So that was a workshop all about vulnerability. And when he realized that there was somebody else suffering as well because of something similar, he actually cracked down open and in front of everybody. And it was really, really deep feeling, and everybody felt that. Nobody understood what's going on. So at some point we spoke, and he became my, because I do hypnotherapy. So I do one-on-one deep sessions into the subconscious mind. And then basically what we discover is that he never forgave. So he didn't know how to forgive. It was through the realization that he was wearing a mask, and through the realization that he was uh, basically hiding his self, who he was, that suddenly in a few sessions he forget. And basically we went to the conscious mind, and he was able to reframe and do something that for him was hours and hours of crying under hypnosis. And he was able to understand why his mother was acting the way she was acting. And then at some point he realized that it was time for him to forgive. And that was a whole release. Suddenly his life completely changed physically as well as mentally. So this is something that is very common to have so many leaders that are acting with a mask. Another example is this founder in India. He is the founder of the largest company in India focused on manufacturing, carpets manufacturing. He's giving jobs to 40,000 artisans around the world. And he's very different. He's one of those leaders that had a really early realization about who he was as a person and as a leader. And his early realization was about mother's love extended to every human being. So what he has created is the largest company in the world, going to the base of the pyramid, to the untouchable caste, to those who it's not just about money, it's about dignity. And he's been able to unconditional love and care to start healing the base of the pyramid through unconditional love, of the love that he, he understood was coming from his mother. So we've been working together now for a number of years. And for me, it's been amazing because I've been coaching him, but he's really coaching me. Because anybody who's been able to give so much love just coming from one person to thousands and thousands and thousands of people, because he was so congruent and so open to mother's love. So there you have a leader completely close to mother's love and basically hiding behind the mask, and another leader completely open to mother's love and being a channel of love for thousands and thousands of people. Both are really remarkable leaders. One of them is suffering, the other one is bringing happiness, dignity, and love to so many people around. So these are two examples of people who are in power and we don't even know who they are.
Those are beautiful examples and showing the kind of diversity of leadership. And I'm wondering, did you follow the first person and to see how he shifted in terms of his leadership style?
Yes, I've been following him, and the day after we went into this deep rebirth, he called me and said, "I'm reborn, honestly. This is rebirth." When he went to the office, people were like, "Where are you coming from? I mean, you look 10 years younger. What do you do?" And he was like, "Oh, true. Is that true?" Uh, and then, what he decided was to share this story with everybody.
Beautiful, beautiful.
That was amazing, because
Uh-huh.
then he felt that he was ready to take out the mask. And what he said is, "Well, let me tell you guys, this is the reality. I'm an asshole. I am. I've been a really bad person for so long. Now I understand why people are leaving this company. Now I understand why we've created a toxic environment in this company. And it's
Wow.
not about anybody here, it's just about me. I've been, honestly, the most angry person. But you know why? Because I was completely empty of love. I was completely full of regret. And I didn't know how to forgive. And suddenly I forget. And now, oh my goodness, this is a different life. So he actually, the first thing he did was to share this with the team, with the leadership.
Beautiful story, Lewis. And it brings up a question that a lot of people raise. And you're, in a sense, you're answering it already. But a lot of people will say, oh, I can't let down my guard. I can't be vulnerable. I can't be open. People will take advantage of me, etc. There are all kinds of stories associated with. But the bottom line story is that people feel they need to hold on to that other authoritative way of being because they think that's the only way to get good bottom line results. And I'm wondering if you, through your experience, can kind of dismiss that myth, so to speak.
Yes, but we all are responsible of creating cultures that don't allow us to flourish, because we are not wise enough. The Buddha would say we are ignorant about how people really flourish. We normally put the focus on the wrong measures. I've been working in companies that focus on double digit growth. That was the key measure, double digit growth. Well, but that's the end game. I mean, I've been sports coach, and you say, okay, what is the goal for this season? We want to win the championship. Sure, but that's it. I mean, you set the goal. Then what do you focus on? You focus on well-being. You focus on well-being, because if people are not well, if people are not healthy, if people don't sleep, if people are not feeling um exuberant, even, they are not going to win the game. So high performance can only be achieved when people are happy and well. And you know, when you do competitive sports, you know this very well. And the top players in the world and the top teams are teams that are able to manage their energy from flourishing, from ananda, from bliss, from happiness. The rest are people that are surviving. They are surviving. It's like we have to do this because I have to make money. Because if I don't make money, I cannot pay for for my living. So it's all people, and this is the majority of the world, that are moving in autopilot, and they are doing things without really understanding the why, the purpose. So what we find is people completely misaligned with meaning. They don't know what the meaning of life is about. People still think that meaning and purpose is about doing something. It's about getting a career. When you go deeper into shadow work, into energy work, when you go deeper into the definition of meaning, you understand that this is not about doing anything. It's about being. It's about live. The best purpose craft that I saw in my life was from this Rinpoche, is a monk in is a really good friend. He said, Luis, you know what my purpose is? I said, tell me. He said, I want to leave footprints of joy. That's my purpose. It doesn't matter if I'm a waiter, if I'm a priest, if I'm a lawyer. It doesn't matter what I do. My purpose is to create footprints of joy. That's it. Well, this is what humanity is about. It's about being something. It's about the embodiment. It's about a talk. That's why when we see leaders who are congruent, that are able to align their thinking with their words, it's about what you think, it's about what you say, and it's about what you do. When you are able to align all three, that's when we create congruency. That's when people are completely aligned, and people love to be with those people. When we are using a mask because we don't want to be vulnerable and open to others, what we are creating and we are bringing in front of people is our shadow, is our fear, is the dark part of us that is creating separation, that is making fun of other people, that is bullying other people, that is basically attacking because I don't want to feel attacked. It's about revenge. It's about seeing the scarcity instead of the abundance. So I think that we are masters as humanity to do the wrong thing in so many ways. But luckily, we have a lot of people that do the right thing often, but they are normally not in the news. Is These are the teachers that we see in schools, are the nurses at the hospitals. These are the medical doctors. These are the people who are at the service of others. We have millions and millions and millions of people, and we don't have a status of these people on the streets. We normally we have a, a big status of heroes because they kill somebody or they defended. Uh, from an army point of view, the rights of people. No, that's not the people that are changing the world. The real people who are changing the world for good are at the service of others. So there's a big difference. You can be resistant, hiding the parts of you that make you feel unworthy, that make you feel miserable, that make you feel fear, shame, guilt, all those emotions that are really at the core of the destruction of energy at so many levels. That's why our recommendation from the World Happiness Foundation is that we elevate the narrative and we go to the top of consciousness. And the top of consciousness is about peace, is about love, is about gratitude, is about meaning, is about bliss, is about all those virtues that we love and that feel expansive at so many levels. So this is the good thing when we work with leaders that they really want to change, is that they change very quickly because nobody wants to feel miserable. If we feel miserable, is we don't have the courage to get the mask out of misery. So this is what we have to bring courage for all those leaders to connect with the essence into and to achieve their what I call fundamental peace.
Beautifully said, Louis, really. And I appreciate that, some of the lessons that you learned from working with teams. So I've done some work as a sports psychologist as well. And at the same time that you're helping the individuals on a team be the best that they do, the best that they can do, there's also an aspect in which you're helping the team members be connected to each other, being on the same page, being very much in relationship with each other, because that's as important as the raising of the individuals to their best performance, because that's what teams do. And it's a great metaphor for everything else in life in terms of relationship and the importance of the synchrony and coherence between people, between members of a team, members of a company, is this notion of coherence or synchrony or resonating with each other. And as you and I know, the more you're able to do your own inner work, the more you're able to be present for that to be possible.
Absolutely. I mean, I still remember when I was the coach of little kids. I really love seeing them all play. They were, I mean, play. Sports is a game. People and kids to play, and it was very interesting how, as a coach, you can create competition, and this is something that some people do. They compete among each other, and you see that they don't feel comfortable doing that. They feel much comfortable working together and collaborating. So this is something that I learned very early. It's like if we as leaders create the conditions for people to co-create, they develop one critical state, which is belonging. And then what would you discover is that belonging is the antidote to loneliness. And it's always said that in leadership, the top leaders feel lonely, that they, some point, they are alone. Well, that's because they don't know how to create belonging. That's why, that's because they separate from themselves, which is the first wound. I talk about six wounds that everybody is carrying in their life. The first, the mother of all the wounds, is separation from self, the separation from your higher self, which is the quantum self, because you don't know how to connect with your own being. Then you are separated. When you are separated, then what you are basically nurturing is five more wounds: the wound of rejection, the wound of shame, the wound of guilt, the wound of numbness, basically not being able to talk. So when you look at all these leaders that we see on television, most of them have all those wounds completely open. And they have to, And you know, when you have a wound open, what do you need to protect it? Because you feel the pain. And how do you protect it? With shadows, intolerance, incongruence, corruption, greed. All those are shadows that are protecting. This is the interesting part. They are protecting you from your heart, from pain. So imagine the world that we are living in. We are living in with people completely hurt, protecting their pain with shadows that are making life of people miserable. That's why we have a World Happiness Foundation, because we have to go the opposite. We have to see the light. We have to see that there is a purpose, there is a meaning, there is joy, there is bliss waiting for us the moment we get all these protective parts as shadows and we open our wound and we heal it with love, with care, with honesty, with humor. When we actually get this in community, that's why belonging is so critical, because belonging is nurtured by community, by being part of community. And what we know as well is that in a world where we are going through collective suffering, we can only heal collectively. So this is not about one person healing himself or herself, because that's not possible if you don't heal in community. So the beginning of the end of collective suffering is collective healing, and that's team sports. And you know this because you've been working with teams. When you work with teams, the most incredible part is when you see the magic of flowing and trusting, people trusting each other, and people going for the best. Uh, I actually work with a really good big company, a, a manufacturer of sports goods in Europe, and the CEO asked me, please come on in and tell me what you see. Because this team, I have 25 leaders. This is a mess. He told me, this is like, I haven't seen a more dysfunctional team in my life. And I went in and basically I did some surveys. I checked for character strengths. Uh, I, I went deeper into one-on-one interviews. And then we did a workshop. And I showed them what they gave me, anonymous, as answers to the questions. From a scale from 0 to 10, the level of stress was 9.5. Stress. Stress that is like manageable, burnout. The level of trust was 1.5. So 1.5 trust, they didn't trust each other. They were 9.5 stress. This is the highest numbers and the lowest numbers I ever seen in a team. So when they saw it and they start talking about it, then they open and say, well, of course, we are competing. We are competing. I want your budget. You want my budget. I'm hiding information. This is so stressful. We are creating our own stress. But the culture was about protecting their own resources, because without those resources, they could not perform the way they were asked to perform. So the whole system was corrupt, from the way they were rewarded, especially the reward system, and the way they were managing resources. So the culture there didn't work, and they were surviving basically by killing each other. So that's an example of how, if you don't nurture a psychological safety and belonging, which is another human need, then you're maximizing high performance. So some people think that high performance is not happiness. Is like, no, they think that no, happiness is something that you manage yourself. Go home and manage your happiness, and then when you come to work, come happy. Well, those are mediocre people. Those are leaders that you don't really get it. High performing teams are happy teams.
So when we talk about good leaders, because here we're recognizing patterns and we're recognizing toxic patterns, which is pretty common, both in terms of the corporate environment as well as the leadership. And so the leaders that we're looking for are those who have the courage to look inside, recognize their own wounds, recognize how their bias, their prejudice based on their history, and are willing to let down their guard, be vulnerable, and grow out of that into a healthier place. And then from there, create healthier environments to help the people in their organization go through similar process.
Yes, we know this is what we want. That's the ideal. But the reality is that that's very difficult and
Yes.
dangerous because the moment
Mhm.
you behave that way in so many places, you are out. You are out because the culture is going to eat you.
Mhm.
So that's why we need to change the system as well. That's why I wrote my book, Capitalism. Capitalism, basically, what I'm saying there is that what you have to change is two things in parallel. You have to go into inner peace from every top executive in the company. And then you have to create the conditions for people to be vulnerable. Let me give you another example. I'm working with this hotel, very big, famous hotel chain in Argentina, in this case. So basically, they hire us in order to create a culture of culture of well-being and happiness for the company, for all employees. So we go there. The first thing you do, you stay at the hotel. So you sleep there, you talk to the staff, you see how people behave. Because if you want to change the culture, you have to understand the culture. So you act as an anthropologist, a bit. You're a guest. And then you talk to concierge, to housekeeping, and then you start feeling this tension. This like people are anxious. People are uh, watching the phones. They are looking around. It's like, oh my goodness, what's going on? I mean, I felt the anxiety from everybody, and I say, whoa, what's gonna happen? What's this is gonna be interesting project. So then we meet the top executives, and there was a focus group, basically explaining what we wanted to do, and suddenly all start fighting and basically complaining. And at some point, the leader who really wanted to change said, okay, I cannot do this any longer. This is enough. We know why we fight here, and we have to tell them. So tell us. It's like, we cannot work here any longer if the family, the owners of this family, five is like a father and two daughters and two sons, keep interrupting and keep becoming part of the directorship, the executive, when they are not. They are the owners, but they are creating so much distraction that when they come, we all fight among each other because they cannot understand themselves. So actually, they gave us the root cause. What is the root cause? It was the family owning the company. So I met the family. Poof, and that was like 2 minutes. It was like, no way. These people were so in pain, from the father to the daughters to the sons. The whole meeting was like suffering. You were feeling the suffering of these people because they had so many family issues. They were like completely distorted family, abuse in the family. I learned this later because I did therapy to one on one. But that was the beginning of change for the company
Mhm.
because
Mhm.
it was at the top level when the whole toxicity was created. And they actually realized that they wanted to change. So after a few months of one-on-one coaching and therapy with the family, everything changed
Nice.
because they understood that they were acting the way they were acting because they couldn't suffer less. So we work at the top level, healing the family. Then second layer, which is the executives, were getting coaching and they were aligning and they were actually team working. And then suddenly everything flows to the rest of the company. And in a few months, now I go back a year later, you go to housekeeping and you see a smiling housekeeper. And then you see people flowing because that's the natural state. We like to flow and we like to share our happiness. But the only way we were able to do that was by going to the root cause of that
Absolutely.
company toxicity, and that was the family owners.
What a great story, Luis, and that's a great story for us to end on. This has been such a enlightening hour conversation with you. I really appreciate it, and you bring to the forefront some very important aspects of leadership, organizational health, and well-being. So I appreciate all of your insights. They're really very apropos for the lessons of today. Thank you very much, Luis.
Thank you so much for everything you do. Thank you, Stephen.
Yeah. Yes. Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for joining me on this Quantum Leadership podcast. I hope today's conversation has inspired you to think bigger, lead more authentically, and take steps toward meaningful change. If you've enjoyed this episode, please share it with others and make sure you subscribe and go to my website, drstephensideroff.com. Thank you again.